When you think of chess grandmasters competing, you might think intelligence, class, dignity, and respect, but that's not always the case. Oftentimes at top-level events, it's not just a battle of the brains, it's also a battle of the egos, and in the post-game press conferences, fiery things happen and people have arguments. In 2014, Anish Giri had the white pieces against Badur Jabava. He's the #1 ranked Georgian player in the world, and they had quite the interesting banter after their game. We're going to take a look at that clip first, and then we will analyze. But basically, Badur is claiming at first in the interview that he's got a good position with some attacking chances. Anish is being very sarcastic, and, well, Badur had a few things to say about that.
And also this move proves probably that there is not such huge attack in the end of the day.
Okay, if you continue your role, I will say some few words to you, and we'll go over this press conference. So speak normally, okay?
Yes.
Not smile like idiot, yeah? Speak
okay,
normal.
but
I'm not that guy who's ironic, yeah?
So, if you didn't understand that, Badur says, I am not the kind of guy you can ironic, stop acting like an idiot, smiling like an idiot, and a little bit later Anish says something along the lines of, well, in this position, Badur started defending really resourcefully by cursing under his breath. You know, it's difficult to play against such a resourceful player. Anyway, that clip isn't really out there. There's no game out there. So let's take a look now at this game. Let me know in the comments whether you've had an in-person or online trash-talking incident, or whether you are usually the person that trash-talks. Here we go. Knight f3 from Anish. This is c5 now and c4. So a symmetrical English opening from the white side. And black plays knight c6, but Anish plays a very early break d4. You don't always have to go for this. You can also just play with the knight, the bishop, but he plays for d4, this trade, and now a very aggressive move by Jabava, e5. Jabava is a very creative and aggressive player. It is much more natural to play something like this, and oftentimes the position will turn into a Sicilian defense transposition, kind of like a dragon Maroxy setup. But e5, knight b5, and Anish is going for this. Well, Badur plays d6, now you have no access because it's covered by queen and bishop, knight c3, and you would think, well, why would Anish do this? Like, why would he put his knights like this? This doesn't make any sense. But it does. He ends up in all of this getting very strong central control. But Badur had serious plans here. He plays the move f5. Very aggressive already. He's playing kind of like a flank attack. He's completely disregarding the fact that he's got no control of the center, and rather than just playing knight f6 naturally, he plays the f-pawn and then puts the knight behind it. It's a very unique idea. Castles bishop e7. And there's a few ways for white to move forward here. White can just very naturally put the knight on d5, but Anish plays e4, striking directly into the center of the board, well, opening the queen, for example. He can also bring his rook to this file. Not a necessary move, but a move. Black takes, and now black doesn't take a second time, because really, if you do this and then castle, it's not so clear whether you've actually improved your position. In many cases, you actually can make the argument that this is just very weakening, and you're just going to get checkmated. So, knight takes e4, he doesn't take, he castles, and here a very natural looking move for Anish is the move knight g5, just going for this bishop. But this bishop is going to move, it's not going to stick around. Bishop to g4, hits the queen, defended like this, and, well, what is there to say? Knight g5 doesn't accomplish anything. So Anish plays b3. And what that does is it obviously blunts the effect of this bishop. And this bishop will come to b2 pretty naturally. Maybe this knight will rotate around to the center to also control. King h8. The point of king h8 is that Badur wants to play bishop g4. He cannot play bishop g4 in this position because while he is attacking the queen, it is protected by the knight. And I will play knight takes f6 check. It's a concept of danger levels. I don't have to get my queen out of danger if I can put something under attack, which is worth more than a queen. That's just the king. So knight f6, and then you would go here. So you would go here. So king h8 gets out of the way of the check. Knight c2, bishop g4, queen d2, queen d7. Bishop b2, take, and bishop f3. So Badur is kind of playing very principled chess here by trying to trade off white's light-squared bishop and leave white with 3 dark squared pawns, which means that the dark squares are good, but the light squares are unaccounted for. There's some shuffling here with the queens. Anish is refusing to take, Badur is refusing to take. Queen, this only looks like it's scary, but there's no actual mate because bishop will take. Rook e3, and now finally this trade. The position really in question, as far as in the thumbnail, is right around here. When the players were shuffling their pieces back and forth, I shouldn't say in the thumbnail, I should say in the clip that we just saw. The players here were shuffling their pieces once. You see Anish repeated. And so Ba3 was asking Anish, he's like, why did you repeat if you're, you know, if you're not scared of my attack? And Anish is like, well, I mean, I just repeated once, I didn't repeat 2 times. And here, Ba3 didn't even go back. He played Queen H3. And this looks great. I mean, Rook H6 mate, except for the fact that that's covered, and also the queen can also come back to G2. So Anish couldn't figure out why on earth Ba3 was saying that he was under attack. But, okay. Bishop E3. Queen goes back to H5, A3, and now Anish starts to create play on the other side of the board. Queen G2, Queen back to E8, Knight B4. The point of this move is to trade the knights and start to advance on the queen side, because again, this bind is very annoying. So H5, Ba3 still trying to attack here, but I'm not really sure what he's attacking. And Anish plays a nice move. C5, a trade. This is anything but a free pawn, because C takes D6. So you have to go Queen G6 defending this. We get Rook D1, a trade, and Anish, instead of taking the C pawn, that pawn used to guard the E pawn. Now the bishop is under attack. You attack, and Bishop C5. Disregarding, again, danger levels. It's equal or exceeding danger. In this particular case, both rooks are hanging, and both rooks disappear. We get H4. Bishop E7 takes. Sorry, Rook D8 check. Not takes, because if you take, I will play Bishop takes. Bad levy. I spoke too fast. If you take. It's not good. We're going to lose here. Anish does not take back. Plays Rook D8 check. Then gives another check. And this king is stuck. But black has Queen H6. And this is kind of funny because even though this is looking like a free rook, it's check and mate. So Anish has to trade the queens and get this endgame where he has Rook Bishop and 4 pawns versus Rook Bishop and 3. The bad thing for Anish is these pawns. The good thing for Anish is that he's Anish. And also the fact that his rook is very active and these pawns can be very easy targets, while this pawn is well protected, even if this pawn is very weak. He also has 2-on-1, which is very useful. So let's see. Bishop C5. Rook E1, King G2. Rook A1, King F3. But Ba3 was actually defending very resourcefully, not just swearing under his breath. He put his bishop on a very annoying square, and when Anish's king tried to walk to C6 and take, look at this. If you go here, I take the pawn, and you're pinned. A very unique defensive setup here from Ba3, like super passive bishop, almost looks like it's gonna get trapped, but never just quite that. So Anish decides, okay, I've had enough. I'm gonna start pushing my pawns on the king side. I'm gonna start pushing here. This bishop is out of the game. That's gonna be my opportunity. And he's actually not wrong. He did exactly the right thing by advancing these pawns. And right here, he had his moment. He had one moment. He could have played Rook to E3. And this move, essentially, is trying to go check. So, for example, if black plays something like Rook D2 check, you'll play King C6, and now you're getting over here. So, if the rook goes to G2, going for your pawn, instead of just pushing, you give a check first. The king cannot come forward, because after check, you lose your pawn. Once you lose both pawns, you're gonna lose the game. If King G6, Bishop E5, you have no actual way of defending this pawn. The pawns are just too strong. If King goes back, then you go G5, and this king is very passive. What Anish did in the game is he played G5 first, before finding this little maneuver, and that allowed black to have an active king. Super important in the endgame. You should try to make your opponent's king as passive as possible, especially endgames like this. Because now, you're just out of time. Like, I want to make all the moves, but there's just not enough time. If Bishop E5 in this position, Bishop takes B4 maybe, but also even something like Bishop C1. And it's not so easy to defend this pawn because of the pin. So we got King D7, but then Ba3 just activated his pieces and boom. This is known as a blockade. When your opponent covers up your pieces from moving forward in an endgame because all of your pieces are on the same color oftentimes. The opposite color then will be weak. And so black creates a light squared blockade here. If white had a light squared bishop, you kick this guy out immediately. It's got a dark squared bishop. And you can't, I mean, it looks like you can take, but then this pawn falls. And very quickly this pawn falls. And now it's 2-on-2. And actually, it looks here like maybe you will create something, but Rook takes B3 was played in the game. And this is actually where Ba3 offered a draw and Anish accepted. You say, well, Why would a niche accept a draw here? That doesn't make any sense. Can't he just take on b3? Also, can't he just take on f4? Yes, but then king g6. And rook and 2 versus rook and bishop. I mean, in the best case scenario, white wins both pawns and then tries to win rook and bishop versus rook, which is winnable. But perhaps Anish was already low on time and didn't even want to do this. And it's like, oh, well, why would it just take the rook? Here's why. So rook and king and rook versus king and bishop is a draw, provided a few things. You're gonna learn about this super random endgame today. There has to be something in this position. Your king, the easiest way to do this, rather than even hanging out in the center of the board, although that is also a draw, is to put your king in the corner of the opposite color square of the bishop, so that your king can stand in the corner and your bishop can be the shield. Watch. This is what we're gonna learn. Let's just run the king to the corner. Literally the most passive thing that you can do. Normally when you're trying to avoid mate or losing, you avoid the corner, but this is different. Because there's no way for the other person to checkmate you. Let's say they get to this position and you play like, I don't know, bishop to d4, for example. They play rook g4, hitting your bishop in this, and you were stopping mate. The only thing you need to be careful about is getting mated, so don't play bishop a1 and hang mate. That completely kills my lesson. You can play a few things. You can even play bishop f6. Why? Because let's say I go here. Well, now it's like, how would you stop mate? Oh, I gotta get back to h2. So bishop e5, check, here. And white can't do anything. If white goes king f2, it's stalemate. You're just stuck in the corner. And if white plays king e2, for example, you can play king g2. Because on the very next move, you're going to go right back to the corner. So it's important that you know how to do this. If you hide your king on the wrong corner, like for example, if you had run your king here and the bishop was here, you would not be able to shield your king from the checks. And so white would just outmaneuver you and win the game. So there you go. That's why after rook takes b3, his draw was agreed. Hopefully you enjoyed a little bit the drama. If you want to go watch the full clip and you've made it this far in the video, you can go ahead and do that. It's in the description. And if there's any other chess drama y'all are aware of, whether or not that content has been covered, for example, by like Agad Matar, just let me know. I want to make videos like this. This is one of my favorite interviews ever, and I never even thought about making a video, but here we are. So do let me know. And then, yeah, we will continue this fun series. I'll see you in the next video.